Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to the Energy Keeper Show. I am your host, Scott Morrison, except when I'm in my authorial mode, then I'm William Scott Morrison, author of the sponsor of this show, The Energy Keeper, or Nixon in the Sky with Diamonds. It's an historical novel set in an alternate universe in the 1970s, in which there was no Vietnam War, there was no Watergate, the Kennedy brothers lived, and Richard Nixon is fighting the first Arab oil embargo and rising gas prices and trying to save the economy, and learns of a plant which, if it were grown for methanol, not ethanol, methanol, could make America energy independent inside of 5 short years. The problem is the plant is something called hemp, which happens to be illegal. Long story there. There's a lot of history and a lot of science in the novel explaining how it became illegal and who is keeping it illegal and what it could do if it were not illegal. But tonight I'm going to jump into reality as opposed to the non-reality of the alternate universe there, and talk about the draft, because the draft is in the news. Donald Trump is out there buffooning away, claiming that draft night saved him from having to join the military. Well, the thing is, he had graduated from business school a year and a half before draft night. So even though he pulled a high number that night, he had been subjected to the draft, or would have been subjected to the draft, for a year and a half prior to that, because his deferments were up, but somehow he didn't get drafted. That's because he had a medical out of some sort. And back in those days, getting an out, as they were called, was a real trick, if you could pull it off. Now, the draft was a big-time issue back in 1992 when the presidential election was rolling around, because Dan Quayle was the vice president and had been in the National Guard and never did go to Vietnam, and Bill Clinton was accused of being a draft dodger. And many people on the right of this country were upset at Clinton, especially those who didn't serve themselves, like Rush Limbaugh. So one day, Rush was doing this program on the Vietnam draft and that whole era. He was at the Republican National Convention in Houston, and I happened to get through to him. They actually let me through to talk to Rush Limbaugh. So I've recorded that, and I'm going to play most of it for you. I have to apologize in advance for the sound quality. I recorded this on a boombox. You know, when I finally got through, oh my God, you're on the waiting list. Oh my goodness, I got 7 or 8 people ahead of you, and so they said just hang on. Bo Snerdley, let me through and told me to hang on. So I rushed around and got my boombox and got it set up with a tape recorder in there to tape the event. The problem is there was that particular day a tree trimming operation going right across the street. We're talking 40 yards away, and they're doing the chainsaws, and then they do the chipper, and all the static you hear is from the chipper going every time they fed branches through it. Okay, I think I'm queued up here. Let's give it a go. Sorry about that static.
Pump up the volume, pump up the volume, pump up the volume. Rush Limbaugh! And back to the phones we go on the Rush Limbaugh program. We're in Houston, as you know, the Republican National Convention, and this is Scott in Petaluma, California. Hi, Scott. I'm glad you waited.
Hello there, Rush. 33 1/3% dittos from the radical center.
33 and 1/3% dittos from the radical center.
Yeah, we're equidistant from liberal and conservative here.
Oh, well, okay, I have fast forwarded to where we skip all the goody-goody talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, because we're both Steeler fans, and other things like Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill. And here we go on the draft.
Let's get to the topic. You are upset with me because of what concerning, you said 33% dead wrong. What is it?
Well, it's on the draft in particular, everybody of our generation had a draft number. Everyone had to deal with it in a certain way. I've just been making a list of some people here. Dan Quayle, Al Gore, Bill Clinton, John Kerry, Tom Hayden, Ollie North, Clarence Thomas, Rush Limbaugh, and me. I would say that between us, we probably represent 90% of all people who had a draft number back then. And for you to have been bobbing around in Pittsburgh at the time that you were, you must have had a great draft number. What was your draft number?
I had, I think, my draft number, you mean the lottery number that everybody got? Number. My lottery number was 150 some odd.
So you were subject to the draft that year then, because you were in the first batch. So you're dropping out of college meant that you subjected yourself to the draft, and what happened?
Well, they never got that high.
They never got that high?
No, I never got drafted. It never got that high.
Did you have to go through your physical and everything?
No. Oh, what, you mean when I turned 18 and go down and do all that? Yeah.
Oh, so you passed everything and you were...
I had to get a draft card. Yeah, I went down there and I went through all that.
Okay.
I think, now wait just a second. Someday somebody may... I don't know. Let me think now, because I'm trying to remember. I know that I got a draft card and it had... Wait a minute. No. I mean, I had a high draft number, but I got a 4F, which was a physical deferment, right?
True.
Okay, that's right. I have two physical problems. One of them I can mention. The other one I don't think would be... Well, I'll tell you what it is, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. I have an inoperable pilonidal cyst. Now,
it sounds gross, Rush.
Well, it is. I am not making this up. And I had at the time a football knee from high school, and it was deemed. In fact, my father, bless his soul, had a pilonidal cyst, and it disqualified him from the Air Force, and it broke. I mean, after he was in the Air Force, the Army Air Force actually, and he. It's a surgical thing, and it was on the list at the time of things that they just didn't want to deal with in the military. So I had the draft number of 152, but I forget which came. The 152 had to come last, had to come after the 4F. So I don't think the draft.
Yeah, it got up.
But I went and did the physical. I did the whole mess.
My question...
I made no effort to evade it or avoid it.
Okay.
That's where you're going.
Well, it's part of where I'm going. If you got to admit, there's probably several 100,000, if not million, people that have the same basic story that you do on that. Would any of them ever be qualified to be commander-in-chief?
Yep. I would be qualified.
More so than Bill Clinton?
Damn straight.
More so than Dan Quayle?
No. Either the same. Dan Quayle served, for crying out loud.
I understand he was in the Guard. He at least had to go through basic and get through all that, and that's, But what about somebody like John Kerry?
Hold on just a sec. Before we get to John Kerry, I want to stay on this Quayle versus Clinton business again, because
okay.
My point is, here's Quayle, who served in the Guard, joined the Guard. People then do stories, made jokes about how it was a rich guy's successful attempt to avoid serving big time. They make fun of him as a result, laugh at him. All this. Here comes Bill Clinton, who wrote letters.
Well, the reason they do that about Quayle is because he's such a right-wing conservative, and if he had those beliefs back then, he should have been the first guy over there, trying to off as many commies as he could. Clinton, on the other hand, was standing up for moral principle, and according to no matter where you come down on this generationally, nobody's going to have the right answer to this one. I think we'll always be suffering through who is more patriotic or who had the better ideals. I don't think any of that has anything to do with whether or not they're going to be more likely to push the button or not push the button or send troops here or not send troops there. And I don't think that
is in essence what I said. Because I said it comes down to the fundamental values that people have as to whether or not they are qualified to be commander-in-chief. It's an ancillary that Clinton is a draft dodger, but it's a big ancillary. And certainly it's more profound a problem for him.
Get ready for his hang-up. He's about to hang up.
Should be for him. This is typically slick of Clinton, and I'm trying more than anything else to point out the disproportionate response and treatment Clinton is getting on this as opposed to Quayle and other conservatives. Thanks for the call, Scott.
That's a hang-up sound right there. Well, I got to go. I only have 15 seconds, and that time is running down. We'll see you the next time on the Energy Keeper Show. For me and Rush go round 2. I'll have much more to say about this segment at that time. Later.